first of all, I'd like to apologize if I come across a little bit bossy. I'm used to talking to teenagers, so I apologize ahead of time. Um, anyway, and when I first met Tommy, or when he first met me, he didn't like me because he thought I was bossy. And really, he didn't know I was flirting with him. So anyway, he didn't like me. So, um, Pastor Travis asked me to be over intercessory prayer, and I was excited about it because the very first day I stepped into this church, I think it was an Easter Sunday, maybe 3 years ago. But anyway, I felt a desire to pray for the meetings and pray between meetings. So Tommy and I would stay in here during the Sunday school hour and just pray. And it's not that I'm good at that, but it was just a desire that God gave me. And so I did that for a while, and then I signed up to be a greeter, which, I didn't like. The reason I did that was to stretch myself because I don't like to talk to people. No.
She's more soft-spoken than I am, so.
Do I have to, is it on? Okay. Anyway, I signed up to be a greeter because that made me uncomfortable. And so, but my desire again was to pray. And so I thought, well, when I shake people's hands as they come in, and I can pray for them in a sense. And but I didn't like, so I enjoyed that, but I didn't like meeting the new people, to be honest. So that was real hard for me. So I invite y'all to do things like that. Just stretch yourselves, because God seems like he never asks you to do anything that you're good at. So, and I've gotten used to it now, so I'm not good at speaking. But anyway, and so we were praying on Saturday nights. We had intercessory prayer, and evidently that wasn't a good time for a lot of people. And so now we've moved it to Wednesdays from 11 to 1. And that evidently is not a good time for people. So I have this idea. On Sunday mornings, we're already all together. And there is something about coming together, corporate prayer. So on Sundays, we're already here. And together, when we pray together, we're an army. And so I want to invite you to pray on Sundays when we're all together. It's not a special time. I'm talking about during the service. But anyway, I wanted to make the point that corporately, we're an army. And so every army has an enemy. So I would like to, this is something that the Lord showed me that I'd like to share with you about our enemy. And I hope y'all all remember during our church's transition, when Pastor Travis became the pastor, the Lord gave him a message, and it was that we were to get rid of the hidden flesh. And you remember he talked about the Israelites crossing the Jordan, and the first thing God commanded them to do was to be circumcised. And that before we can move forward, we need to get rid of our hidden flesh. All right, so I still believe that we cannot move forward until we do that. And now our God is asking us, we have the faith forward, and he's fixing to give us increase. And we need to prepare ourselves for that. And so, let's see. Okay, our flesh or sin keeps us from moving forward with God. In Joshua 6:7, chapter 6 and chapter 7, after they were circumcised, they set out to claim their promised land. All right, so they were victorious against Jericho at this point. Remember the Battle of Jericho? They marched around it. God was with them. Everywhere they went, they were victorious. They saved Rahab and her family. All right, so the next town they came up against was Ai, and it was small. All right, so it should have been easy. They didn't even send all their men there. That's how, it was easy. All right, but they lost. And the enemy actually chased them and struck them down. So, that's embarrassing. They lost, and people died. So, in Joshua chapter 7, verse 6, I'm going to start reading. This was Joshua's reaction. I think I'm going to go ahead and put my glasses on, too, so I won't. Oh, that's better. Okay. All right, verse 6. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell face down to the ground before the ark of the Lord, remaining there until evening. The elders of Israel did the same and sprinkled dust on their heads. And Joshua said, "Alas, sovereign Lord, why did you ever bring this people across the Jordan to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites, to destroy us? If only we had been content to stay on the other side of the Jordan. Pardon your servant, Lord. What can I say? Now that Israel has been routed by its enemies, the Canaanites and other people of the country will hear about this. They will surround us and wipe out our great name from the earth. What then will you do for your own great name?" And does this sound like us sometimes? The enemy's attacking us and our prayers are going unanswered. And we're like, oh God, what are we going to do? What's going on here? Where's my increase? All right, so verse 10, the Lord said to Joshua, "Stand up. What are you doing down on your face? Israel has sinned. They have violated my covenant, which I commanded them to keep. They have taken some of the devoted things. They have stolen. They have lied. They have put them with their own possessions. That is why the Israelites cannot stand against their enemies. They turn their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy whatever among you is devoted to destruction. Go consecrate the people. Tell them, consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. There are devoted things among you, Israel. You cannot stand against your enemies until you remove them." So what had happened, a man named Achan, I hope everyone remembers the story, the Lord had commanded them to destroy everything, and to the gold and silver, some of the treasure were devoted to the Lord, that he wanted them to put into his treasuries. So a man named Achan had taken some of that and hid it under his tent floor. And he knew that was not right. And so his sin made them liable to destruction. Other verses or other versions of that say doomed to destruction, or some of them say accursed. But their point, they all make the same point, that you cannot stand against your enemies until you remove it. Okay, so in verse 12, it says that, talking about the enemies, they turn their back, well, talking about them, they turn their backs and run because they have been made liable to destruction. All right, so I looked up, I thought, liable. What exactly does that mean? And so I looked it up, and it was really interesting. The word liable means endangered, exposed, open, subject to, susceptible, vulnerable, at risk, in deep water, in jeopardy. And some related words: uncovered, undefended, unguarded, unprotected, unscreened, and unsecured. So they were made liable, they were made uncovered and undefended, and exposed to destruction because of this sin. So every sin, big or small, and really it's our flesh, opens a door for the enemy to attack. Or sometimes he doesn't attack, he sneaks in. And so we walk around exposed. And you cannot stand against your enemies until you remove them. Okay, so there's a verse that says, the devil walks around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour. We're supposed to be sober and vigilant. And in Ephesians, it tells us that anger gives a foothold to the devil. So it's not an example from Old Testament. This is New Testament. In Romans 13:12, it says, earlier in Romans, it talked about what we should do, right living. And it just went through. And then in verse 12 it says, so let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. And so the Living Bible says shining armor of right living. So in other words, deeds of darkness, that's like no armor. You're exposed. You're liable to destruction. And so when you get rid of that flesh, then that's the same as putting on armor. So it makes sense that you're covered then. And I'm not talking about losing our salvation. I'm talking about just being open to attacks from the enemy. It's about walking victorious and boldly. I'm going to try to add to that. Because like I said, it's not about your salvation. The Lord's been opening my eyes lately to how much just the smallest things, and I wouldn't even call them sins, things you don't think about, just attitudes or motives even. They get in the way of, they open the door, and we can't walk victorious or bold, because how can you maybe play with the devil and try to shoo him off at the same time? And a lot of times it's not that obvious. He can just sneak in. But he's really been opening my eyes that it's the more pure you can get your spirit, the easier it is to hear him. And so, and anyway, okay, and so we need to just recognize those open doors and close them. It could be our attitude, our motive. It could be unforgiveness or doubt doubt can open a door for the enemy to lie to you. And he sneaks in. Okay, our TVs, for us, that's a big one. Because you might have it be mature in your faith, but your TV can open the door to attacks. Sometimes, I'll use some examples. Sometimes I'll wake up, they're scared. I'll wake up and be afraid for no reason. And I grew up having to deal with fear, and I was delivered from a spirit of fear, so I recognize it. So sometimes I'll wake up and just be afraid, and I hate that feeling, and so I don't put up with it. And so anyway, the next morning, I'll think, okay, what show did we watch? And sometimes it wasn't a bad show. We don't watch bad shows. We like a lot of science fiction, but it might be something. Okay, well, we don't watch it. We don't watch it anymore. But it opened a door for evil to come into our house. And so 1.2 is when we open a door, it doesn't matter if it's something Tommy or I watched. It affects our girls. It affects the whole family because it came in the house. And even Claire said, yeah, I was afraid too for no reason last night. All right, so Another thing is like video games. If we haven't watched anything, then I'm like, okay, what kind of video games are the girls playing? So I go ask them, hey, I woke up, I felt this way, there's an open door somewhere. So anyway, we ask them about their video games. And they're more than willing to get rid of them. But anyway, and so see, things that they do, things our kids do can open a door in our house. So, Tommy as a leader of our home, he can easily bring things into the house and as the leader, and so the girls can't do. Anyway, so anything like that, we have to be careful and be quick to get rid of it and close the door. Because none of us are perfect. Okay, it doesn't matter what the sin is or what the problem might be. I don't really want to focus on that. The point is that it exposes us, and the devil can attack our finances, he can attack our health, anything, when we're open. And so we have to be fully protected and covered to wage war on our enemy and move forward. And we have to be fully protected and covered to help our friends and our family when they're being attacked. Because the devil, he's a thief. And he says he's come to steal, kill, and destroy. And so any little crack, he is going to want to get in it, and he's going to want to take your blessings before you ever even get them. And if you think about it, we lock our doors, for protection. We have passwords to protect our information. And so we need to make way for increase and prepare to guard it. And one of my favorite ways of coming against the enemy is warfare prayer. So I'd like to talk to y'all about that, because that's it's almost fun. I know that's not like me at all. I've come a long way, and it feels good to be bold against the enemy. I can walk through my house in the dark, and I'm not afraid anymore. And if you knew me, that's a big deal. And so I'm not afraid to I'm afraid of people, maybe, but I'm not afraid to use authority against, and pray against things. Okay, my favorite time to do warfare prayer has become during praise and worship on Sunday mornings. And so that's what I want to invite y'all to join me and have that mindset during praise and worship. Because when we come together and we worship with our hearts, our minds focused, and with our words, we have the potential to tear down those strongholds and run the enemy off, because we're declaring truth and our words are weapons. And I'll give you some examples. In Revelation 12:11 and 12, it says, "And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death." Okay, well, the blood of the Lamb, Jesus, he bought our salvation. All right, so we overcome the enemy only because by Jesus' blood, only because he overcame the enemy. He defeated the enemy, and so we are covered in his blood. And the word of their testimony. Okay, they're talking about the persecuted church, the martyrs, and they died declaring their faith. The word of their testimony was them declaring their faith. And the word testimony, it means a public recounting of a religious conversion or experience, a solemn declaration. So they declared with their mouths and overcame the enemy. In the Bible, the enemy was often defeated through declarations. If you think about it, Paul and Silas in jail, they were singing. Well, they were praising God. I don't know exactly what words, what songs. They were probably singing some Psalms of David. And you know that they were set free. The prison doors came open, their chains fell off. Joshua and the walls of Jericho. All right, they blew ram's horns, and Joshua declared, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the town." So see, he declared with his words, and the walls fell down. Okay, Gideon. All right, he defeated the Midianites with trumpets, torches, and shouting, "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon." Remember, he only had a few men because God kept, he was scared, and God kept dwindling them down because he was dealing with his faith and trusting the Lord. And so they broke the pots and blew the trumpets, and they just shouted. They shouted, "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon." They were declaring. And the enemy, actually, God confused them. They started killing each other. And so that's another thing that I like to do. You can pray confusion on the enemy and on his plans. And another example then is David and Goliath. All right, this was David's words to Goliath. And think about his situation, who he's talking to, and who he is, little old him. But he was bold. All right, he said, "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. So he declared the truth. Okay, in all these cases, they exalted God with their words to do battle. And the word exalt, it means to hold someone or something in very high regard, think or speak very highly of. And it also means to raise to a higher rank or a position of greater power. All right, that made me excited. All right. To exalt means to raise to a higher rank or a position of greater power. So just think, when we exalt God in our lives, we're giving him, he's all powerful, but you give him permission to do battle for you. And we put him on a pedestal. When we exalt with our words, we put him on a pedestal, and we acknowledge who he is. And an example of this in my life, I was with another youth leader at another church, and we were praying. We were at the junior high praying over the campus, and we were just standing at the front of it. And so I was just praying, praying for the kids and coming against this and that. And anyway, I just felt compelled to just start praising God and lifting up his name. Instead of focusing on the devil and coming against him, I just started, just worshiping and lifting up the name of Jesus. And I could feel in my spirit that was tearing down strongholds. And all it was, I was just worshiping and exalting God. And so anyway, that's the power of when we do that, the power. And then just think about how mad that makes the devil. I came to his school and started worshiping God, lifting up and reminding him who God is. And if you think about it, the devil was created as an instrument, a musical instrument. So he was supposed to be worshiping God in music and praise. But he wanted to be worshiped. And so he was thrown out of heaven. So just think how mad that must make him when, instead of us giving him any attention, any of our worship, we take his place in heaven and we're worshiping God instead of him. And so, I like to think about that too. When I invited y'all to do this during praise and worship, that's one of the things I think about. It's like, I'm thinking about how awesome God is and how great he is, and I'm exalting him and magnifying his name. And in the back of my mind, I can't help but think, ha-ha, devil, you can't have none of my heart, because I can just tell that God has got it. And that must aggravate him so much that, anyway. Anyway, I'd like for y'all to join me on Sundays. Pray with the songs and sing with your heart and declare the lyrics, because most of the time, all the time, our songs are you have that opportunity. We don't just sing about God or it's not, it's very powerful music. Um, so, and you have to expect, you have to expect God to move and expect strongholds to be broken. And don't let your mind wander, because that even, you come in and you're kind of tired, and you're thinking about why you're tired. That doesn't work. You have to focus, and you can say things like, and I love this phrase, but I love telling God, "There's no one like you, God," because that is so true. And I think of all your relationships on earth, and none of them compare to God. And so He loves for you to tell Him, "There's no one like you, God." And He alone is worthy of all of our praise. And then we can confess Jesus is Lord. Sometimes I'll just say Jesus is Lord. I just say it over and over. But y'all should be singing too. I'm sure Pastor Travis doesn't want us all to not sing. But that's some of the things I do during a song, if maybe just when I feel led. And get excited that we are redeemed. That's another thing I think about during praise and worship. Can you imagine where we'd be? We're redeemed, and we don't deserve it. And just think what Jesus had to go through to redeem us. He loves us so much. And so think about things like that, and that we're free. And when you expect and you proclaim these things, then the devil, when you exalt God, the devil has to flee. He has no choice. And so that's when you can get that freedom you need from maybe any open doors. That's how you close those doors. And even keep in mind the people around you. Pray for them. If there's someone you don't know standing behind you, kind of pray that God would open their eyes. And that's other things I pray. I pray God would open my eyes. And because you don't want to believe anything that's not true. That's why your prayers can go unanswered also, is because you're not, it's not the truth. And so you're expecting something, and it's you're believing a lie. Does that make sense? And so pray that God would show you the truth, open your eyes. Let's see. I hope that made sense. I have a song that I'd like to end with, and it's just an example. It's going to be, I want us to have a time to just to exalt God. Just I'm trying to. But anyway, I think I've said everything. So if y'all don't mind standing, I just want to play this song. And like I tell the youth,